joining.
This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we have Toni with the Baking Coach, and she's going to be teaching us how to make some chocolate truffles. If you don't have the ingredients with you, you can write them down, or you can email me at bmakowski@Oceanside Library, and I'll send you a list of the ingredients. And hopefully in the future, when things get back to normal, you can go out and buy some and make some for you and enjoy this lovely treat. And I'm going to turn it over now to our presenter, Toni.
Hi, everybody. Like she said, my name is Toni, and I work with the Baking Coach. Before we get started, I just wanted to thank anybody that's an essential worker, frontline workers. Thank you for everything that you guys are doing. You're working so hard, and we all know that. Just thank you again, and this will get better soon, so just thank you. Today, we're going to be making two different types of truffles. We're going to be making a chocolate cheesecake truffle as well as a cookies and cream truffle. They both have similar ingredients, but they both have cream cheese really, so it can't be that bad. So we're going to start with the chocolate cheesecake truffle. I'm just going to read off the recipe first, and then we'll go step by step, and I'll show you how to make them. So we have an 8-ounce package of cream cheese that is room temperature, 3 cups of confectioner sugar, which is powdered sugar, 3 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips. We're going to be melting those, so once we melt those, it's going to come about to 2 cups. And then we're going to have a teaspoon and a half of vanilla. If you guys don't have semi-sweet chocolate chips, you could always use milk chocolate, dark chocolate, even white chocolate. It's about what you have in the cabinet now, because as we know, the stores are a little crazy to get to, so the recipe's very forgiving, and you can always substitute different types of chocolate. So what we're going to start with is a large bowl and a spatula. I have my cream cheese here. I wrapped it up and left it out for a little while. We're just going to dump that in our bowl. What I like to do is just break it up with my spatula, just into chunks. And mine seems to be a little too cold where you can't really spread it across the bottom. If you didn't have a chance to let it come to room temperature, you can always zap it in the microwave, which I'm going to do now. I just do it in about 5-10 second bursts because you don't want to melt it. So I'm just going to throw it in. I definitely wouldn't go more than 10 seconds because we don't want to melt it, then we can't make the truffles. So yes, this looks a lot better. This light is very bright today. What I like to do is just smear it across the bottom, put a little pressure, and that'll soften it up. So I'm just going to continue to do that until it's all the same consistency. There we go. Okay. So once you're done getting it pretty soft, I just like to scrape it all off the bottom so when we start to add the sugar, it doesn't stick and can get it all mixed in. Okay. And then we're going to start adding our powdered sugar. We're going to add 3 cups of powdered sugar total. Do not go and just dump it all in at once. You're going to start to mix it, and you're going to be wearing all this powdered sugar by the end of it. So I just start very little amounts, and then don't go in crazy because, again, it's going to come out of the bowl or you're going to wear it. So we're going to start. We're measuring our cup. At the Baking Coach, we love these little popsicle stick craft sticks because you use it to level. If you don't have one of these guys at home, you can just use the back of a knife just to make sure you get a nice level amount. Don't even go dump a whole cup in. I would say maybe like half a cup at a time, maybe even a little less. There we go. Start to mix very slowly. I'll probably still end up with some powdered sugar out of the bowl. I feel like that just has to happen with powdered sugar or flour. Just wants to jump out of there. So just start to fold it in very slowly. Again, like scrape it against the bottom of the bowl. Make sure you get all the edges. Once it looks like it's starting to incorporate a little bit, then you can go a little faster with the mixing. And as we move along, you won't have to go so slow. And it might not look like it's incorporating at first, but just keep going, it will get there. Okay. This is how you make cream cheese icing for, say, like carrot cake or something like that. It's really just softened cream cheese and powdered sugar, maybe some vanilla. So if you need to know how to make it, now you know. So you just keep going. This process takes a little while, but it'll all be worth it in the end. So right now, we only just added a little bit. It just kind of looks like softened butter. It really doesn't look like much. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead, add a little more, and do the same thing over and over again. You know, very fun to watch at this point. You're gonna keep going. If you have kids at home, this might be something fun for them to do. Okay, that's the first cup. You could always also use like a stand KitchenAid mixer if you have one at home, or one of the hand mixers. Or you can get a nice arm workout in and do it all by hand. Okay, so now it still looks the same, but it's a little looser than before. So now we're going to go in for our second cup. Seems like a lot of sugar. Again, make sure it's level so you have the right amount of sugar. And we get to repeat the same process over and over again. Okay. I wish I could make it move faster, but I don't want to be covered in powdered sugar. Really make sure you're getting all those sides, all that loose sugar that's on the edges. You want that all to be incorporated. Okay. We have one more cup to go after this. Almost there. Okay, now we just have one more cup. I find it easy when I'm working with dry ingredients like powdered sugar or cocoa powder or flour. I like to pour it into a bigger bowl and then take my scoop. Sometimes, especially with cocoa powder, when you go and try to scoop it in the container that it's already in, it'll make it fly everywhere, it'll spill everywhere. Here, you have to wash another bowl at the end, but I think it's worth it when you don't have to change your clothes. Here we go. You won't have to do your at-home arm workout today when you make these things. Okay, a little more. Now it's all over my hand. Then we're just going to add that last bit. Finally, the home stretch. Ooh, we got a little spillage over there. Right at the end. I thought I was good. Okay, now once you see that all the flour is incorporated, just do a couple more scrapes just to really make sure. Okay, once it's all incorporated, We're just gonna look like this. Really doesn't look different. I'm just gonna rinse my hands off really quick because I'm covered in cream cheese. Okay. So now we have some cream cheese icing, and we're gonna turn that into a chocolate truffle. So the next things we're gonna have to do, also a little time consuming and a little boring to watch, we gotta melt some chocolate. So these are just the regular semi-sweet chocolate chips that you'd get from Stop and Shop or anywhere. Like I said before, you can use any type of chocolate that you want. It should turn out just fine. So we have to melt 3 cups. Got a little spillage. When you're melting chocolate, you want to start melting it on 30-second increments, and then you go lower and lower. Just because chocolate can burn very easily, especially when it's already like kind of half melted, if you push it over the edge a little bit, it will seize on you, which means it'll harden up. That's 20 seconds, you can start at 30. It'll harden up and it won't melt anymore. You might think if you put it in for longer, it'll melt. It won't. It'll just get worse. It'll harden and you won't be able to use it. You'll probably have to throw it out and start again. So like I said, we start at 30 seconds. Go with the bigger bowl. If you use something like this guy, this little measuring cup, I'm going to use this later to melt some chocolate, but I'm only melting about like half a cup to a cup. Right now I'm melting 3 cups of chocolate. So you want a bigger bowl so that temperature could really regulate and you have a lot of room to stir. Because that's super important when melting chocolate, is to make sure to stir. I'm using my favorite little spatula. You can use whatever spoon. The bottom loves to melt first. If you can see it a little bit right there, the bottom starts, that's where it starts to melt. So even though the top might not look like it's melting, make sure you stir it. Stirring is super important. You want to regulate the temperature of that chocolate, because also only one part of the chocolate could start to seize if you didn't mix it well enough. And then you're like, well, what happened? It didn't look like the whole thing was seizing. That little part will make the whole thing seize, and you have the same situation. So I'm going to go another 30 seconds, and then we'll probably start going down to 10. We just have to wait and see. Melting chocolate is not very fun, but it has to be done. You could also do it over a double boiler. You have a pot of water and then that. But water is also, along with excessive heat, water is also one of the main enemies of chocolate. So you have to be very careful when you're doing that. Mix very slowly. If any water splashes up in that chocolate, it's going to seize. We all love chocolate so much, but it's very finicky if you're using it for these reasons. So we're going to go ahead, give it another mix. Okay. This is what we have so far. It's like a little bit is melted. You just want to keep going. Now I'm going to go down to probably 15-second increments. Just make sure you mix it. That is just so important. When I was going for my bachelor's degree in pastry, I had to take 2 different chocolate classes. We're making huge chocolate sculptures, and you're just covered in chocolate. I'm like, I love chocolate. I love to eat chocolate, but not to do this. It's not fun. Okay, so that was just 15 seconds. Now we can really see some more melting going on. Okay. I just spun some chocolate at you guys. So right now, we're probably 60% of the way melted. I'm going to drop it down to 10-second increments. Make sure you mix, because say you think you see a lot of chunks left and you just automatically throw it back in the microwave. Maybe if you just mix it a little longer, all those little chips would have melted. That could be potential for seizing if you just throw it back in when you think there's still chunks left. Okay, we got another 10. We're looking good. Probably 80% of the way melted. We are almost there. Another 10 seconds should do the trick. Okay. Another 10 seconds. Hopefully we should be there. Okay. And even if you don't get every single chocolate chip melted, that's okay. We'll just have a little chocolate chip bit in the truffle. Not the worst thing to happen. Okay, this is looking pretty perfect. We're pretty fluid here. I'm not seeing any lumps, so I think we're good to go. So now we're going to combine the chocolate into our cream cheese mixture. Before I go ahead and do that, I'm just going to add 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract to our cream cheese, just so I don't forget about it. You could always add different flavorings. You could do mint if you like mint and chocolate. Oops, that is the wrong teaspoon. We don't want to add too little. Whenever I'm measuring some vanilla, I don't like to do it over the bowl, just in case you get a little overfill. 1.5 teaspoons. Perfect. And now we're going to go ahead and dump our whole bowl of chocolate into our cream cheese, and then we'll mix from there. Just dump it all in. Don't forget any of that chocolate. Make sure you scrape the bowl. I hate it when I'm watching Food Network and they're doing something like this and they don't scrape the bowl. They leave like half of it in there. They're like, okay, all done. I'm like, you just left so much chocolate in that bowl. Like, that's all the good stuff you're leaving behind. In culinary school, they said you're wasting money if you leave it left in the bowl. Okay. Just gonna throw this in the sink. And now you're just gonna fold it until it's completely incorporated. Make sure you scrape the bottom to get all that cream cheese down there in. I always like to flatten, let's pick it up. I always like to flatten the spatula and just go back and forth. Really just make sure it's all incorporated. As you mix more, it might become a little harder to mix it and incorporate it. That's because that hot chocolate is touching the room temperature or cold cream cheese. So it'll start to harden a little bit. That's okay. Okay. Really make sure you're getting down in there. Right when you think it's all mixed in, you see that little bit of cream cheese left. Okay. Scrape the sides. Okay. Now we have this glorious little mixture here. I'm just going to rinse my hands and then I'll keep going. Okay, so at this point with our truffle batter, I guess you could say, you're going to have to let it chill in the fridge for about an hour. So this is like my favorite part of this. I always feel like I'm on Food Network. I already have some made that I chilled so I could show you how to finish them. I only made about half a batch, so that's why it looks like so little when I show you guys. So at this point, let me just get a little spoon. So it's right down there at the bottom. It's pretty hard, but you can still smear it a little bit and you'll be able to roll it. So at this point, we'll be able to roll and finish them. So I just have a cookie tray right here. I put some aluminum foil down. It's an easier cleanup. I love an easy cleanup. So we got to roll up our sleeves for this guy. We're going to roll them in about 1-inch size balls. I have a little scooper here, cookie scoop. I find it a lot easier because I'll scoop out a bunch and then I'll go and roll them all. So now I know that they're uniform size. So if you have one of these, even if it's a little smaller, bigger than 1 inch, that's completely fine. They can be big if they want. If you don't have these, you can just use a spoon to scoop some out and just make sure that they're all a similar size. So all you're going to do is you're going to, probably be easier if I put this down. You're just going to scrape in there. It's pretty pliable. It's pretty easy to scoop. And like I said, I'm just going to scoop out like 4 or 5. I'm not going to do it all right now because you don't need to watch all of it. So I'm just going to scoop it out. And then I'll go back and roll them. Really make sure that scoop is full. Okay, I'll just do 5 right now. Perfect. And then I just go roll them with my hands just to make them into a ball shape. If you were making these for somebody, if you do have food safe gloves of some sort, I would suggest putting them on for this process. I always think it's a little gross when you're rolling these out in your hands and then you're going to give them to somebody. Especially now with all that's going on right now. So we're just going to roll them out. They don't have to be perfect. The nice thing about these is they shouldn't, since we let it chill for a little while, it shouldn't leave marks on your hand or chocolate on your hand. Just a little oil from that cream cheese. Okay. And then the last step for these guys is you can roll them in just about anything. I'm going to roll them in some cocoa powder, but you can always roll them in the Oreo crumbs. If you have leftover Oreo crumbs from our cookies and cream truffles, you can roll them in like toasted coconut, or even I was thinking like pretzels, like crushed up pretzels would be good, like the salty and the chocolate would be nice, but really anything that you want. Maybe even some walnuts or peanuts. So I'm just going to put a couple scoops of cocoa powder into just this bowl. Okay. So all you're going to do, just disperse it a little bit. Then you're going to take your truffle and just roll whatever you're rolling it in, and it's all the same. Roll it until it's completely coated. Now you have your little truffle. For these guys, as well as the cookies and cream truffles, they should stay in the fridge because they do have that cream cheese in it. And I would say they last about 4 or 5 days in the fridge.
Toni, we have a question. Do you need to spray the tin foil with any kind of like a spray?
No, you shouldn't have to because we chilled it. They come off pretty easily, especially when you cover it with something. It protects that little sticky layer, so they shouldn't stick at all. Okay, and there we have it. We have our lovely chocolate cheesecake truffles. I'm just going to wash my hands before we transition into the cookies and cream. So now we have our cookies and cream truffles. So I'm just gonna set these guys on the back stove because I'm just gonna use the same cookie sheet. If your cookie sheet is full, you can just throw it in the fridge. I would throw the whole cookie tray in the fridge if you have the room for it for about a half hour, just so they can really firm up. And then you can move it, say, to like a Tupperware container and just make sure it's airtight. If you're scared about them sticking to each other in the container, you can always put a layer of like tin foil or parchment paper, even plastic wrap in between the layers just to prevent them from sticking together. So I'm just going to switch my trays here that I have all my ingredients on. Okay. So before I go ahead and start the next truffles, I'm just going to do the same thing and read down the recipe for these guys. So we start with the 8 ounces of cream cheese, room temperature. Then we have a package of Oreo cookies or any chocolate sandwich cookies that you have, about a package. When you should have about 4 cups of crushed Oreos. So however many Oreos that takes you, might be a little less than a package, a little more. And then 2 cups of melted chocolate. So you get to watch me melt more chocolate. Woohoo. So I already have my Oreo chocolate sandwich cookies in a Ziploc bag. What I'm going to do to crush them is I'm going to put them in another gallon-sized bag, and then I'm going to use my little rolling pin to crush them. So let me just get my other bag. Here we go. And the reason I do this is because when you're crushing them, you might crush holes into the bag, and then you might end up with Oreos everywhere. So I just like to do a double bag just to be careful. You still might poke a hole in it, but it's okay. There we go. Just gonna wipe the table really quick because I didn't notice all the powdered sugar on it. This part is also fun for kids because you get to whack and crush some Oreos. It's even good for adults too to get some stress out. Make sure all the air is out of the bag. It'll make it a little easier. And then you can go ahead. You can either literally whack it, or I just like to roll it at first. Really get all those Oreos crushed up. If you have a food processor at home, you could always do that as well. It's a little easier, a little faster also. You want to get them pretty tiny because they'll be at the table. You want to make them pretty tiny because they're going into the truffle, some of them, so you don't want like giant pieces of Oreo. I'm going to take it out and be a little rebellious and just do one bag because there is some air left in this guy. So I can get that out. If you don't have a rolling pin, you can just use about anything to crush up these Oreos. Okay, we are getting there. These are like the recipes to watch like the longest, boringest parts of things. Make sure you flip the bag over because you might think you're done. And then turn it over and there's full Oreos on the other side. My little brother just peered around the corner and is staring at me, smushing all the Oreos. They're always the taste testers. They always get all the good stuff. Okay. Shuffle it around. I was thinking of doing this before the video started to have them ready, but I'm like, no, they should, see it. That's taking forever. Okay. These look about perfect. There might still be some bigger chunks in there. That's okay. When you're going to pour them into the truffles, if you see any big ones, just break them up with your hand, or just run your hand along the bag right here. And if you feel any big pieces, just go ahead with your hands. You could always put them in 2 bags so there's more room to crush. That might have been a smarter idea for me, since our bag is pretty full here. Okay. There we go. So we're just going to set these aside for a second. And we're going to get another decent sized bowl out. I like to use the glass one so you guys can somewhat see what I'm doing. So we're going to start with our favorite part again, like the other ones. We're going to have to soften that cream cheese. Like I said earlier, if you didn't hear it, you could always use the microwave to soften it, just in 10-second bursts. Okay, we're going to take our spatula and just crush it, break it up, push it against the bottom. Okay, I'm just going to zap mine in the microwave quick. It'll make the process go by a little faster. I just knocked some cups off on the floor. I'll pick those up later. It's fine. I honestly knew that I should have moved those cups earlier. I'm like, you know what? It'll be fine. And there it is. Now there's 12 cups on the floor. Okay, much nicer, much easier. Like I said, you can whip out that hand blender, even a stand mixer. Okay, that's nice and soft now. Just like before, looks exactly the same, just like some soft butter. Okay, now we're going to revisit our Oreos. We are going to add 3 cups of our crushed Oreos to our cream cheese, just like that powdered sugar before. Don't add all of it at a time. You could probably go about a cup at a time with these guys, because it's not like the sugar where it's going to fly everywhere. Just make sure they're all crushed up. Okay, you're going to start with the cup. It's a little hard to use the popsicle stick with this guy, so I just like to shake it off. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect. You're never going to get it completely flat with these Oreo crumbs. So as best as you can. We got 1 cup. Remember, scrape those sides, get all the way at the bottom. And even mixing it like this will continue to crush up those Oreos. So if you're worried that you've got a few big pieces in there, this should just chop them right up. Really squish that cream cheese down. As you mix the cream cheese and it gets softer, it becomes more fragrant. I just take the cup. Okay, that's cup number 1. Number 2 in here. It starts to just look like cookies and cream ice cream. Really get down there. If you had a really stressful day, these truffles are a great thing to make. Between really mixing these guys in and crushing those Oreos, should make you feel a little better. Okay, and then our last cup here. A little more. There we go. You're going to put your Oreos aside. We're going to need them just in a minute to top off our truffles. Mix in that last bit here. Really scrape all the way at the bottom. Okay. Perfect. So now it really just looks like felt spatula. some cookies and cream, ice cream. So we're going to take our sheet pan back out. You can use a different one. You can use the same one. Just turn it around. These truffles are a little different than these guys. These ones you scoop, you roll them, and you finish them before you refrigerate them. That's just the way the recipe is. I have a smaller scoop, but if you don't have one, you can always wash off one, or you don't have to use a scoop, like I said before. You make them all different sizes. Really doesn't matter. So we're gonna get in there with our scoop. I'll just do 5 like I did last time. Okay, and when you're rolling these guys out, they might stick to your hand a little bit just because they're not completely cooled. But that's okay, we can just wash our hands, which we should be doing more often now. Okay. These guys are filled with Oreos. We're gonna top them off with even more Oreos. We're gonna drizzle some chocolate on them. Okay, let me just wash my hands.
Toni, while you're there, we have a question. Are we adding any of the melted chocolate to this ingredient recipe?
So what the melted chocolate is for is to garnish them. You might not need 2 cups, you might need a little less. So I would just start out with like what I'm gonna do, since I only have 5 to garnish right now. I'm just gonna do about a handful of chocolate chips and melt it. So if you wanna save your chocolate chips, because I know it's very hard to get them in stores right now, you don't need to automatically go for that 2 cups. You can just melt some, and then if you need a little more, melt a little more. So we're gonna do some more chocolate melting again. We're gonna start with our 30 seconds. Okay. What we're gonna do is we're gonna drizzle the chocolate on. So any way that you can do that, in the recipe it says to use a fork, so you get 4 little strands. It's a little easier. If you want to get a little fancier, you can use a sandwich bag. Is probably better because it's just a little smaller, but it's the same concept. If you fill the chocolate in the bag just to one corner, you gather it up and you snip it, it'll become a little pastry bag and you can get a little fancy. So we're going to mix up our chocolate. Mix it up. Okay. Always the fun part. That's also why I did a smaller amount of chocolate, just so it doesn't take as long, because I know it's not that fun to watch. Okay. I just stopped at 15 seconds this time because it is such a small amount of chocolate. Okay, we're getting there. At home, if the chocolate isn't as fluid as you would like it to be to drizzle, you can add any sort of fat, like I use butter or shortening, or even you can use like coconut oil or something like that. If you add just a little bit at a time, do not add too much. It'll make that chocolate more fluid. But like I said, don't add too much, because then, especially if you use shortening, you'll start to get that little flavor in the back of your mouth, and shortening doesn't taste very good. Okay, we're almost there. At home, if you happen to have like the candy melts that you would get from Joann's or Michael's or any sort of craft store. Those melt very easily as well, and you can get a bunch of funky colors going on. I wouldn't add melted candy melts to save these truffles. The first one, we need to add it into the batter because it does have a different flavor. But those are always good for garnishing. Okay. We have melted chocolate. So it doesn't have to be perfect, especially because we're going to put more Oreo crumbs on top. You can do as much or as little as you like. So we're just going to go ahead there, drizzle it back and forth. Like I said, if you add some more of that fat, it'll more easily drizzle across. This is how regular chocolate just is. Not too fluid unless you add something to it. And if you're melting this at home, it's not too fluid and you're staring at it and you're like, maybe if we just heat it up a little more, it'll become more fluid. Do not do it because you will overheat it and then you won't have anything. Okay. Got a tickle in the back of my throat. So then we're just going to take more of our lovely crushed up Oreos. And you can use a spoon or your hand, whatever. Just get some crumbs. And you just sprinkle them right on top. Okay, that's a bigger piece. Probably won't look too pretty on it. So we're just going to drizzle and sprinkle. If you don't want to put Oreos on it, you don't have to. You could always put like sprinkles on it. Like for the first truffles that we did, if you roll them in sprinkles, that would be pretty cute, maybe for like a birthday party or something for some kids. The same thing with these guys. You can always sprinkle whatever you want. Get a little fancy, make it your own. Okay, so once we are done garnishing these ones, the cookies and cream ones, before you serve them, they're pretty mushy right now, so just leave them in the fridge at least a half hour, but if you can get it up to an hour, even overnight, that's completely fine. Just make sure they're chilled before they do get served. They're the same as our chocolate cheesecake truffles. They need to stay refrigerated in an airtight container. Probably for 4 or 5 days they'll be good. You can probably push it a week, but that flavor might just start go away in the chocolate. So I would say serve them 4 or 5 days at best to get maximum flavor. So if anybody else has any questions, I can wait a couple more minutes and then we can be done for today and you can go enjoy your family time and make some truffles with everybody. So I'll just wait another minute in case any last minute questions come in. If you're watching this not live and you do have questions, you can always email the baking coach or the library and they can get in contact with us. Anybody else? Okay, so I guess that is it, everybody. I hope you enjoyed watching. These are very, very, very delicious, especially if you're stressed. These take the stress away. Chocolate always takes the stress away. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoy eating them and making them with your family. Like I said, I am Toni from the Baking Coach. So everybody have a great night.
Thanks, Toni. They look delicious. I want to go out tomorrow and buy all the ingredients and start making them. But they are good even like as a party or a dinner. Like
Yeah.
as a dessert for a dinner, they would be like really cool to add to the table of and chocolate. So that looks really interesting. Thanks so much again. I hope everyone had a good time. I hope everyone enjoyed watching and we hope to see you again, Toni. So take care. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Good night.